Welcome. As we begin our service, know this: you are welcome here, no matter who you are, no matter whom you love, no matter your race, age, class, gender, spiritual path, if you have any. For here at Unitarian Universalists of Transylvania County, we ask only that you come with an open heart and your goodwill. My name is Edie Gabsick. I am a member of the worship team here at UUTC, whose mission is to support individual spiritual journeys and to promote social, economic, and environmental justice. Now I have some announcements. For our good health, please wear masks while in the building. Use the clipboards to sign your name and telephone number in case contact tracing becomes necessary. Enjoy the music without singing aloud for the time being. Exit the building between services to allow for complete air exchange. Offering baskets won't be passed from hand to hand, but you can drop in contributions and your name tag into baskets and bowls by the doors on your way out. This month's special collection is the Ministerial Discretionary Fund. I'd like to introduce Lauren Agrella-Sevilla, who will share opening words after our first hymn. Lauren lives in Brevard with her sweetheart, Matthew, and their two sons, young sons, Asa and Elias. She is an educator who has worked as a school and nonprofit leader, teacher of history and literature, environmental educator, and yoga and mindfulness instructor. Pursuits she sees as all intimately connected to what it means to be human. She loves the forest, poetry, growing food, riding her bike, traveling, and learning from others about the various ways to engage fully and open-heartedly with this life. Our first hymn today will be Meditation on Breathing. Just a slight change. That was an introit, beautifully played by Joey Dukes. And now we will have the meditation on breathing.
That was so beautiful. Thank you to Joey Dukes for sharing his handpan and for the a cappella group sharing that beautiful rendition of that meditation. I've got some opening words today from beloved poet Mary Oliver, who we all are familiar with in various forms. This is a poem I just discovered from her. It's from a collection called Evidence Poems. As for the body, it is strong and solid and curious and full of detail. It wants to polish itself. It wants to love another body. It is the only vessel in the world that can hold, in a mix of power and sweetness, words, song, gesture, passion, ideas, ingenuity, devotion, merriment, vanity, and virtue.
We move more deeply into worship with the lighting of our chalice, symbol of Unitarian Universalism. Our chalice lighting words are, "Let the chalice connect us," from Catherine Callahan. As the chalice is lit, let us come together into the sacred space we have created. Let the cares of the day fall away, and know that here is a place for quiet reflection, for a pause in our lives, for breathing into our true selves. Let what is said here and felt here add richness to the dimensions of our lives and spiritual practices. We are strong together in community. We share the experience of being human. Let the warmth of the chalice lit during our time together connect and carry us into the world. Now it is time for the cycle of life. Vanessa Cowie will assist. The cycle of life holds our collective joys, sorrows, and concerns of a loving community. We light a candle for the workers who continue to show courage and determination during this pandemic, who take away our garbage and drive our buses, who care for our children and patrol the streets, who stand ready to care for us. We light a candle to recognize all of us who are experiencing grief, sorrow, and loss. We light a candle for the ongoing joy of face-to-face reunions, the delight of reconnecting in real time after so many months of relative isolation. We light a candle for the joys and concerns that have been shared this morning in chat, online, or in person. I invite you to pause and reflect on these and all the other joys and sorrows that remain unspoken at this time as we listen to May I Suggest, performed by Red Molly.
May I suggest to you, may I suggest this is the best part of your life. May I suggest this time is blessed for you. This time is blessed and shining almost blinding bright. Just turn your head and you'll begin to see the thousand reasons that are just beyond your sight. The reasons why I suggest to you, why I suggest this is the best part of your life. There is a world that's been addressed to you, intended only for your eyes. A secret world, a treasure just to you, of private scenes and brilliant dreams that mesmerize. A tender lover's smile, a tiny baby's hands, the million stars that fill the turning sky at night. Oh, I suggest, yes, I suggest to you, yes, I suggest this is the best part of your life. There is a that you'll do one better than was done before. Inside you understand. Inside you know what's yours to finally set right. And I suggest to you, and I suggest this is the best part of your life. This is a song, comes from the west to you, comes from the west, comes from the slowly setting sun. This is a song to see how very short and the days will run. And when they're gone, and when the dark descends, we give anything for one more hour of light. May I suggest this is the best part of your life.
I'm prone to tears, and that song gets me every time. I've got an opening reading from Sonia Renee Taylor, an author and poet who wrote this poem in honor of her mother, Terry Lynn Hines. It's called My Mother's Belly. The bread of her waist, a loaf I would knead with 8-year-old palms, sweaty from play. My brother and I marveled at the ridges and grooves, how they would summit at her navel, how her belly looked like a walnut, how we were once seeds that resided inside. We wiggled, my brother and I, when she would recline on the couch, lift her shirt, let her belly spread like cake batter in a pan. It was as much a treat as licking the sweet from electric mixers on birthdays. The undulating of my mother's belly was not a shame she hid from her children. She knew we came from this. Her belly was a gift we kept passing between us. It was both hers of her body and ours for having made it new, different. Her belly was an altar of flesh built in remembrance of us, by us. What remains of my mother's belly resides in a container of ashes I keep in a closet. Every once and again, I open the box, sift through the fine crystals with palms that were once 8, feel the grooves and ridges that do not summit now but rill through fingers, granules so much more salt than sweet today. And yet still I marvel at her once body. Even in this form, I say, I came from this. Good morning. I'm glad we could be together here this morning. Thank you all for making this a part of your day. Gathering in person is so sweet. I'm Lauren. I know some of you from my years here in Brevard, working with the Muddy Sneakers program, and as the owner of Brevard Yoga Center for some years, have been among you in this congregation with Matthew and our sons, Asa and Elias, for some years. I'm glad to be here this morning to share some thoughts. And I'd love to begin with a little centering. So if you will, settle yourself into your seat. And as much as is feasible in this moment, begin to still your body. If closing your eyes feels safe to you, you're welcome to do that. I'll invite us to allow our breath to move in and out through the nostrils, maybe out through the mouth, and to bring awareness to that movement of breath. Many of us move through whole days, Edie and I were chatting, without recognizing that we're breathing. So here's an invitation to acknowledge the breath moving in and the breath moving out. We'll move here through a grounding exercise called 4-3-2-1 to land us in our body and in our awareness here in this time and space. So if you like, if it's working for you, allow yourself to take 4 full and spacious cycles of breath. Like this is your only job in the moment, to allow your breath to move in and allow your breath to move out. You might notice if there's any constriction in your face or the soft palate of your mouth. Perhaps see if that's willing to release a little bit. When you're ready, we'll shift our attention to sound. It's a really quiet room right now. My house does not often sound like this. See if you can name, just within your own mind, 3 distinct sounds that you might hear. Perhaps those are within the room, with someone's body next to you, or within your own body. Next, we'll shift our awareness to this body that we're housed in this morning. I wonder if it's possible to identify 2 specific places in your body this morning that feel steady and reliable. Maybe that's the weight of your bottom on the chair, or your feet in your shoes, or some other specific sensation of stability. And lastly, we'll shift our awareness into our hearts. And if you like, you can name 1 thing there is to appreciate about this moment. 1 thing about this moment that for you feels worthy of gratitude. And so here we are. If you like, you can open your eyes once again, having maybe landed in this time and space a little bit. I'd like to explore this morning with you the idea that the world we want to be possible, a world of collaboration, of peace, of honoring and valuing difference, of mutual respect for other human beings and for the natural world, of introspection and teamwork, begins within these bodies that house us, particularly in how we look upon and meet these bodies. This is by no means a relationship that I have in any way mastered. I stand before you very intrigued by its possibilities and continually working on this idea. I've been thinking a lot in particular about the body in the last number of weeks. My father's been in various stages of hospital care for the last month and didn't look like his body was going to continue for this life. He's back home as of yesterday, so there's that development. And I also had some knee surgery on my own body this week, so I'm just really cognizant of this embodied state that we live in, right? Everything, as you all know, many of you know because you've been on this planet longer than I have, right? The state of our physical bodies characterizes everything that we do. So many of us who are drawn to Unitarianism find ourselves with a strong intellectual bent, right? We like to read. We like to consider theories. We like to pore over history. We like to apply frameworks. We like to value scientific perspective. Yes, and my question today is, how do we build a compassionate world that is different from the one that birthed us? Perhaps we begin within, as we've heard many times in our spiritual lives. We examine our viewpoints. We look at our past and the cultures that raised us. We read, we write, we talk, we listen. We do that again and again and again. This is all important, of course. And I'd like to propose today that there may be another really important piece as well. So I'd like to posit this morning that no matter what kind of world we would like to leave to our children or our grandchildren, the work of change starts with how we relate to our own physical forms. In my current work life, I have the privilege of working with teenagers and college students in the yoga and mindfulness realms. Many in the Western world see yoga and other mind-body practices as meant for slim white ladies in expensive spandex who have a lot of leisure time to nurture their flexibility. I don't blame anybody who thinks that, like the media puts that picture out there, for sure. I stay in this work, though, despite feeling that misunderstanding or that dissonance, because I have a deep belief that the practice provides a foundation for a life, a foundation far beyond stretchy hamstrings and illusions of inner peace and perfect stretchy clothing. The practice asks us ultimately to arrive at home within ourselves, which is no small charge. To slow down long enough to connect to our own bodies, to be aware of our own thinking, to sit with living in this human body, with this human mind and this human heart. There is, of course, no singular answer to alleviating human suffering and to put the lid on the harm that we continue to do to one another. But I'm a believer that mind-body practices offer an entry point for reconnecting with a humanity that many of us lost long, long ago when we grew up out of our child's body and we steeled ourselves against the world. Many of us were taught, often through the modeling of our elders, to feel shame about our bodies, their shape, their color, their thinness or their thickness, their ability or their disability, their dis-ease, their ease, their differences, their conformity, their stability, their constant evolution. Everything we do, say, and think is born in the body. If we practice loving its imperfections, its challenges, its changes, its strengths, its abilities, its joys, I'm curious if this translates into how we step into the world and how we can love others and love humanity. I wonder if this sounds to any of you like something potentially hopeful. Sonia Renee Taylor, whose poem I read earlier, is the founder of The Body Is Not an Apology, and she's got a book of the same name. She asserts in her work of that name that the book is not about something as simple as body positivity and acceptance. I'm quoting her here. She writes, "It is about the ways in which we see others and ourselves and judge one another on far deeper levels than we may know, because at the heart of it all, even the deepest held beliefs begin with the most superficial and perfunctory glances and barely conscious judgments. The deepest convictions we hold and the ways in which we interact and treat one another in the world are often put into place there by the seemingly most superficial of assessments, those of others' bodies and our own." I'll invite us for just a moment to think for a moment about your internal monologue when you wake up in the morning and you first glance yourself in the mirror. Right? Like what's the messaging in your mind? Or when you go shopping for new pants. Or when you're leaving your physician's office. Like what's the internal messaging? This may seem like a big leap, this idea that how we look upon our own bodies and how we meet them with compassion and curiosity, with softness, with a willingness to change and a quest to understand, may translate into how we step into this world. The fifth of Martin Luther King Jr.'s principles of nonviolence is that nonviolence chooses love instead of hate. Nonviolence resists violence of the spirit as well as of the body. As I've experienced this life thus far, nonviolence applies to how I interact with my own body, with my own thoughts first. It's easy to love children. My youngest turns 6 tomorrow. Michael's with his 6-year-old grandson, it sounds like. It's easy to love children. We see their innocence and their genuineness. And it gets harder. It gets harder to love ourselves and others as life impacts the walls we put up, our judgments, our ability to connect with ourselves, our ability to connect with others. So a question I've been pondering is, what can we do to restore this innate self-love and self-appreciation? What can we do to responsibly steward our own journey in our own bodies so that the attitudes we practice daily carry into the world in our interactions? Ross Gay, if you've not yet read his work, is amazing. Writes in his chapter, Cocoa Baby, from his Book of Delights, of his ritual of rubbing coconut oil on his body after a shower. So I'll quote him here for a moment. Today when I watched myself, particularly when I was oiling my chest and stomach, which I kind of do by self-hugging, I was thinking how many bodies of mine are in this body, this nearly 43-year-old body stationed on this planet for the briefest. I could see, as I always can, probably kind of dysmorphically, my biggest body when it was 260 pounds and a battering ram and felt sort of impervious. I could also see my 12-year-old self, chubby and gangly and ashamed. Of course, the baby me, who I don't remember being, though I've seen pictures. When you see yourself in the mirror, oiling yourself like this, wrapping your arms around yourself, jostling yourself a little, it's easy or easier to see yourself as a child, and maybe even a child you really love. It is easy if you decide it, which might be hard, to let the oiling be of baby you. Or at least I thought so today, looking at myself, whom I am so often not nice to. But the baby you oil until he shines. The Book of Delights is a really fabulous work if y'all get to look at it. So that was from Ross Gay. So this self-compassion, I think, begins with a willingness to slow down, to stop driving so hard. This is another skill I have not yet mastered. I'm on that road somewhere toward the very beginning. But when we've pressed the pause button long enough to tune into the wild landscape of our minds, to notice the thoughts moving warp speed from future to past and back, we say hello to ourselves. We begin to notice what's informing our thinking. We begin to befriend ourselves. What if we spoke to ourselves, to our bodies, this way, as in, friend, we have some challenges. I want to understand you. How can we work on this together? My own interest in getting to know my own body and mind was decades in the making, and it was born of a dark path of depression and escalating anxiety before little rays of light began to shine in, before I began to see my own imperfection and the imperfection of others as worthy of love. There is no arriving. There is no striving for some fictitious ideal. There is only being here, where we are. And sometimes it takes a tremendous amount of slowing down to see our feet beneath us. Especially in our culture as it exists right now, it's a radical act. This is a word that Sonia Renee Hayes uses in her book a lot, radical. It's a radical act to slow down. It's blatantly countercultural. We have to turn off our phones, which is like crazy, right? We have to stop responding to dozens of external requests for our attention. We have to cease our relentless talking, our constant responding. We have to stop the incessant comparing that we're addicted to. We have to commit to stepping out of the stream of doing and achieving and going. What if we practiced meeting our own bodies and minds with this deep friendliness that I'm hinting at here? How would that inform how we're able to meet other bodies in the world? In an era when we are more divided from one another than many of us can remember being, in a time when we're finding new ways of being utterly unconnected and hateful toward one another, we need something radical to shift. How then do we cultivate this love we want to see in the world? I have some ideas, but no answers. I'm curious if it has to do with slowing down, with breathing in, with breathing out, with feeling this body that houses us, with saying hello to the long-lost ghosts of our childhood selves. Befriend them, genuinely. I do believe mind-body practices offer a room in which to become human again. And it's a room that many of us were never taught to look for. If we're connected with our breath, if we're aware of our body's response to anger, to frustration, to fear, and we can recognize it, we connect with a way of moving through the world informed from a hard-earned look at ourselves and our own humanity. We cannot possibly kneel for 9.5 minutes on a suffocating man's back. We cannot possibly yell racial slurs from windows of cars at human beings walking down the street. We cannot possibly see another person and fail to feel some semblance of connection, some semblance of ourselves within them. Many of my college students, when I ask what anger feels like in their bodies, they shrug their shoulders. I have no idea. I haven't thought about that before. And I get it. I get why that's the answer. After a semester of 2 hours a week practicing some yoga postures, of focusing on the breath, of sitting and noticing the movement of the mind here and there, many begin to notice things they've never noticed before. To be fair, this is not easy work, and some students understandably confess they want nothing to do with it. But many do start to make some connections. They begin to notice how often they put themselves down, how often they feel not good enough in some way or another. Many observe their tendency to self-blame or to blame others. They begin to notice how these attitudes toward themselves color all of their interactions, how their internal monologues bleed out into the world, and how they walk through it. I know I've found this litany of things to be true in my own practice. This is not easy work, and it's not quick. Resmaa Menakem, the author of My Grandmother's Hands, some of you may have read that book. It's a look at racialized trauma. Takes this a big step further. He's devoted his work to helping people living in black and white bodies to begin to heal. He writes that, quote, "Few skills are more essential than the ability to settle your body. If you can settle your body, you are more likely to be calm, alert, and fully present, no matter what is going on around you. A settled body enables you to harmonize and connect with other bodies around you, while encouraging those bodies to settle as well. Gather a group of unsettled bodies, or assemble a group of bodies and then unsettle them, and you have a mob or a riot. But bring a large group of settled bodies together, and you have a potential movement and a potential force for tremendous good in the world. A calm, settled body is the foundation for health, for healing, for helping others, and for changing the world." So that's from my grandmother's hands. Relating to our bodies, like all of life, is a practice. We experiment. We offer our curiosity. We make mistakes. We try again. We circle back. I am always humbled daily by what I do not know. I'm in awe of the world around me. I'm in awe of the strength of others. And ultimately, as I practice more and more, I'm in awe of my own strength, of my courage to speak up, of my courage to be quiet and listen. And I'm more aware of my own compassion, my own ability, my own capacity for compassion toward my own hurt, toward my own brokenness. And I'm in awe of my ability to heal and to evolve. We can learn so much about science and humanities and technology and mathematics and artificial intelligence and culture and politics and all of it. But here's the thesis of this whole idea today. If we're to preserve this world that we love so much, we've got to have a lens of self-awareness, of reflection, and of compassion as we journey from here outward and onward. Or else we just keep doing deep and irreparable harm to one another as we plow forward in the interest of progress. I'm a little crazy. I realize some of my thoughts are a little fringy, but I do envision a world of people sitting still, breathing deeply, noticing their own scrunched up foreheads, their own crimped up necks, and making the choice not to just keep going, but to stop and to breathe and to wonder at what they notice, to nurture it and to soften it. Perhaps we will choose not to walk blindly forward with our tension and our anger into the next guy. Perhaps we will choose instead to name what we are feeling, to hold it for a moment gently in the palm of our hand and to investigate it, to share the feeling with another trusted soul, to return to this human breath. This is not a luxury, this pausing and connecting with body and mind. Call it whatever you need to, but call it essential to being fully human. Thank you for hearing my thoughts this morning. I'm grateful.
Thank you, Lauren. Our closing words of benediction are by Elaine Gallagher Gehrman. Walk softly, speak truthfully, love gently, breathe deeply, live wisely, go in peace. Our closing hymn is Find a Stillness, performed by Terry and Daniel Sandoval.